Hello everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney, and I am going to be ranking the last 10 Game of the Year award winners based on the modern day version of the Game Awards. So anything before Witcher 3 2015, I'm not going to include. But I do want to rank rank the last top 10 Game of the Year winners, and I thought it would be something fun to do. It's going to be very controversial based on my own takes and my own opinions, but I do think that I also try to be as much and less biased as possible. Now, this is a very hard list to rank because it's extremely difficult because these are all excellent games. The only game that I personally know that I could put in one of the rankings is only at number 10. After that, it's a little bit more difficult, and again, these are just my personal opinions. This can be vastly different to what you believe. There's going to be some hot takes. There's going to be some controversial takes. But, again, this is for fun. And if you want to let me know what you rank down below in the comments, let me know. But, as I said before, the one game that I know I could rank at number 10, very simply, is really, I think, the weakest Game of the Year contender out of this group. And that is It Takes Two. Now, don't get me wrong. It Takes Two is a fun-ass game. It's a fun-ass co-op game. But if you compare it to the rest of the Game of the Year winners, it's probably the weakest out of the group. You know? It is probably the weakest out of this group. So that's why I just cannot put it at rank it any higher than number 10. I just can't. To me, it's the lowest ranking out of all of these magnificent games. So I just can't. Now comes the harder part. Numbers 1 to 9. Numbers 1 to 9 are very difficult. I had to debate myself into what I would rank all of these. But if I were to rank a game out of these at number 9, I would honestly put Overwatch. Now, why Overwatch? Understand that back in 2016, Overwatch was a fucking phenomenon. It was huge. If you were in the gaming space, you knew what fucking Overwatch was. It just took the gaming world by storm, right? But over the years, Overwatch has had a lot of controversial things, a lot of things that just happened, right? At the time, it was definitely should have been deserving Game of the Year. Because at the time, it was going up against, I believe, Uncharted 4. Which, a magnificent game on its own. It just didn't have the same impact as Overwatch. So the reason why It Takes Two is number 10. Because during 2021, that year was a little weak. So it was also taken by surprise that it won Game of the Year. But Overwatch, as much as I like the game, it's also very repetitive. And it just comes to the point where it just feels like you go into the same match over and over again. It can be addicting depending on who you are. But Overwatch, to me, just compared to everything else, it doesn't really match up higher than 9, in my personal opinion. Now again, it's all dependent on yourself as well. I just can't rank it anything above 9. Now, numbers 1 through 8. Ooh, this is probably going to be my first controversial take. Because I know this is going to be a hot topic. And it was a hot topic when it won during its year. I'm going to put number 8, God of War. And I understand there's going to be a lot of people who will be like, are you fucking nuts? God of War at number 8 compared to Astrobot or, The Last of Us Part 2? Allow me to explain my decision. And this is going to come off a little kind of weird for my decision. But I think God of War Ragnarok is the better God of War between the two. Because it improved upon what God of War did. And to me, God of War was an excellent fucking game. I did not think it should have beaten Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't think it should have. And this is coming from me, who literally played Red Dead Redemption 2 and almost fell fucking asleep because of how slow it fucking was. I've seen so many people love Red Dead Redemption 2, and based on what I've seen from people playing it, it looks like a much better game than God of War, and it should have won, you know, during that, what was it, 2018. And understand, I love God of War. I love the game. But to me, it really came down to, it just felt like I don't want to say the word tech demo, because it's definitely not a tech demo, but the story was a little lacking. You were playing, when I thought of God of War at the time, I thought we were going to go up against a bunch of fucking gods, fight them, beat them up, right? But we didn't get that. We only fought like a few gods, or even demi or semi, or like gods that aren't at the top of the pantheon, until God of War Ragnarok, right? So to me, God of War just, it just felt unfinished, and that they were just going through the tech that they had to produce a God of War game. And then when God of War Ragnarok came out, that became the much better game. So to me, I think God of War at number 8 on this top 10 list, I feel is its place. Now, at number 7. At number 7, I'm sorry, but The Last of Us Part 2. It is a great fucking game in terms of gameplay. Right? It's a great fucking game in terms of gameplay. But the story behind The Last of Us Part 2 just, to me, oh boy. I just could not, I just could not at all just like it. I did not like the story. Many of the story narratives, many of the story beats that they Last of Us Part 2 had, I just made me like really get a headache, and I just did not like the story elements at all. I really do not. But in terms of actual gameplay, the actual game itself, aside from the story, it was a pretty decent game. It was a really good game. I do think that if God of War had a much better terms of narrative and like where you are able to actually fight more gods, it would have been, these would have been flipped. But to me, and God of War might have been actually higher, but to me, I just can't. I personally cannot justify God of War above Last of Us Part 2, because aside from the story, the narrative and stuff like that, it's still a fucking good game. It still had great gameplay. It was very much an improved version of The Last of Us. I just couldn't. I just really did not like the story whatsoever. So I will put it at number 7. At number 6, I have, honestly, this one was a little tough because I was debating between two. I think for number 6, Astrobot. I think for number 6, I would put Astrobot at number 6. Astrobot is a platformer. I fucking love platformers. Platformers are essential to, I think, in every shape or form, what you should think of, like, in terms of gaming. Not just learning how to make games, learning how to play games, but also teaching how to make games, because platformers are, I think, for me personally, embody what a game should be like, the feeling of a game. And Astrobot was fucking phenomenal. It beat out fucking Metaphor. It beat out Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It was just a shocking result for a lot of people, myself included. But it was so much fun. It was absolutely incredible. If you could literally compare it to like Mario. That's just how good Astrobot was. The only drawback was that it was very short. But I think Astrobot at number 6, I think, is perfect. I think it definitely is well deserving to be in the top 10. But I will put Astrobot at number 6. Now, number 5. I will put Sekiro at number 5. Sekiro was fantastic. Sekiro was a great game that a lot of people loved. But when you compare it to the other 5 that are here, I just it just loses out in the end. It honestly loses out as the out of the rest. Out of the 5, I think it just loses out from the rest. That's just simply it. It's a magnificent game. It's a fantastic game. The difficulty is a little bit difficult, but for the most part, I think at number 5, it's perfectly well deserving. Now we're going to the final 4. The final 4 is going to be very tricky. It's going to be very tough. If I had to pick, and this hurts me just a little bit to put this at number 4, but I would put Breath of the Wild at number 4. And this hurts me greatly because Zelda is my personal favorite video game franchise, and I love Breath of the Wild. And it beat out a hard competition in 2017, like Persona 5, like holy hell. But one thing that Legend of Zelda lacks, it is a game, but it lacks a really good story. Right? It lacks a really good story, but it provided you with so much nostalgia fuel. It provided you so much that like you are finally able to see Hyrule in such an open world fantasy. You'll be able to explore Hyrule in such an open world, everything. The side quests were a little but side quests in any fucking video game are like at this point. But like exploring Hyrule, going through all of this, it was just such a magnificent experience. I personally hate that it's not my number 1 out of all these games, but I just cannot. It sucks at the end of the day. It really does suck that as big of a Zelda fan I am, I don't think it's in the top 3 compared to the other 3 that remain who won Game of the Year. Now, it's really tough. The top 3 is really tough, but I do think I know what number 3 would be, and that will be The Witcher Wild Hunt. The Witcher, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic game. Holy hell. Right? It is so fucking good. Everything from the side quests to the main characters to the story, it was just so incredibly fun. Is deserving of the number 3 spot. I think above Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because I think in terms of like open world fantasy, I think it's just so much better than Breath of the Wild in terms of just character, story, especially story. Story-wise, like Breath of the Wild is one of its weakest, but I do think The Witcher definitely deserves a top 3 mention, and definitely is a top 3 out of these games. Now, again, this is just my opinion. You could just put Witcher wherever you want. But the last 2 games that came out in the last 3 years, technically, for the top 1 and 2 are Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3. Now, this is going to be, depending on who you are, controversial take. You know, I know a lot of people love Elden Ring, specifically From Software fans. They fucking love Elden Ring so fucking much. But Baldur's Gate 3 has its own fucking fan base, and it really became a genre-defining game. So which of these 2 games do I think are 1 and 2 respectively? And who are essentially about equal in terms of the best, 1, 2, games of the last 10 years. Again, I win or lose regardless of who I pick at this point, right? But if I had to pick which of these 2 games are 1 and 2 respectively, I would put Elden Ring at number 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 at number 1. And I'll explain my reasoning why. Is that really smaller than the rest? Whatever. And I'll explain my reasoning why. Don't get me wrong. Elden Ring is a fantastic game. Fucking fantastic. From Software, it is just an amazing game that people love. There's more DLC coming out. Absolutely everyone loves Elden Ring. But Baldur's Gate 3 defined the fantasy RPG genre. It has so much more playability. It has so much more features and so much different ways to play that it actually feels like an actual tabletop Dungeons and Dragons type of fucking game. And to me, when we're thinking of Game of the Year, what game provides the player with the best gaming experience? Is it Elden Ring, or would it be Baldur's Gate 3? I personally believe it's Baldur's Gate 3 because it allows people from every facet of the gaming community to play the game in many different ways. Elden Ring has the playability, it has the gameplay, it has the difficulty, it has the boss fights, it has almost everything you could just, notch off, on everyone's personal favorite game of the year list. It's a fabulous and fantastic game. But it doesn't provide the player base more of a way to play the game that Baldur's Gate 3 did. You could play Elden Ring in many different ways depending on the player. That's not the argument I'm making. It just doesn't compare to the level that Baldur's Gate 3 provided for the player. And Elden Ring also can feel a little intimidating for a lot of players. A little intimidating. And that might be where a lot of my personal opinion comes from. But I do think Baldur's Gate 3, from the last 10 years, I do think Baldur's Gate 3 is the best game that came out in the last 10 years. It was genre defining. It allowed the player to play in any way they choose. It has a little romance. It has fucking almost anything you would want in terms of a gaming experience. And that's why I think Baldur's Gate 3 should be the number one game from the past 10 years that has won Game of the Year. Again, this is my personal opinion, my personal belief based on my personal opinion, but also trying to be as unbiased as possible. And trust me, I do not like Western RPG. I do not like Western fantasy RPG games at all. I don't like the style. I mostly prefer JRPGs. But I cannot deny the things that Baldur's Gate 3 has done. It has generated an impact within the gaming community with not only its gameplay, with its genre-defining gameplay. Everything about Baldur's Gate 3 speaks to me Game of the Year, and it just towers over every other game that's here. And that hurts because I'm a fucking huge-ass Zelda fan. But this is my top 10 games of the last 10 years that have won Game of the Year. Right? You can agree, you can disagree, you could do anything you want, you can have your own opinion. That is perfectly fine. But me personally, that would be my ranking of the last 10 Game of the Year winners, ranking the top 10. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So take care, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.